Nationalism in India. Our real problem in India is not political, it is social. This is a condition not only prevailing in India but among all nations. I do not believe in an exclusive political interest. Politics in the West have dominated Western ideals, and we in India are trying to imitate you. We have to remember that in Europe, where peoples had the racial unity from the beginning and where natural resources were insufficient for the inhabitants, the civilization has naturally taken the character of political and commercial aggressiveness. For on the one hand, they had no internal complications, and on the other, they had to deal with neighbors who were strong and rapacious. To have perfect combination among themselves and a watchful attitude of animosity against others was taken as the solution of their problems. In former days, they organized and plundered. In the present age, the same spirit continues, and they organize and exploit the whole world. But from the earliest beginnings of history, India has had her own problem constantly before her. It is the race problem. Each nation must be conscious of its mission, and we in India must realize that we cut a poor figure when we are trying to be political simply because we have not yet been finally able to accomplish what was set before us by our providence. This problem of race unity, which we have been trying to solve for so many years, has likewise to be faced by you here in America. Many people in this country ask me what is happening as to the caste distinctions in India. But when this question is asked me, it's usually done with a superior air, and I feel tempted to put the same question to our American critics with a slight modification. What have you done with the Red Indian and the Negro? For you have not got over your attitude of caste toward them. You have used violent methods to keep aloof from other races, but until you have solved the question here in America, you have no right to question India. In spite of our great difficulty, however, India has done something. She has tried to make an adjustment of races to acknowledge the real differences between them where these exist and yet seek for some basis of unity. This basis has come through our saints like Nanak, Kabir, Chaitanya and others, preaching one God to all races of India. In finding the solution of our problem, we shall have helped to solve the world problem as well. What India has been, the whole world is now. The whole world is becoming one country through scientific facility, and the moment is arriving when you also must find a basis of unity which is not political. If India can offer to the world her solution, it will be a contribution to humanity. There is only one history, the history of man. All national histories are merely chapters in the larger one, and we are content in India to suffer for such a great cause. Each individual has his self-love. Therefore, his brute instinct leads him to fight with others in the sole pursuit of his self-interest. But man has also his higher instincts of sympathy and mutual help. The people who are lacking in this higher moral power and who therefore cannot combine in fellowship with one another must perish or live in a state of degradation. Only those peoples have survived and achieved civilization who have the spirit of cooperation strong in them. So we find that from the beginning of history, men had to choose between fighting with one another and combining, between serving their own interest or the common interest of all. In our early history, when the geographical limits of each country and also the facilities of communication were small, this problem was comparatively small in dimension. It was sufficient for men to develop their sense of unity within their area of segregation. In those days, they combined among themselves and fought against others. But it was this moral spirit of combination which was the true basis of their greatness, and this fostered their art, science, and religion. At that early time, the most important fact that man had to take count of was the fact of the members of one particular race of men coming in close contact with one another. Those who truly grasped this fact through their higher nature made their mark in history. The most important fact of the present age is that all the different races of men have come close together, and again we are confronted with two alternatives. The problem is whether the different groups of people shall go on fighting with one another or find out some true basis of reconciliation and mutual help, whether it will be interminable competition or cooperation. I have no hesitation in saying that those who are gifted with the moral power of love and vision of spiritual unity, who have the least feeling of enmity against aliens and the sympathetic insight to place themselves in the position of others, will be the fittest to take their permanent place in the age that is lying before us, and those who are constantly developing their instinct of fight and intolerance of aliens will be eliminated. For this is the problem before us, and we have to prove our humanity by solving it through the help of our higher nature. The gigantic organizations for hurting others and warding off their blows, for making money by dragging others back, will not help us. On the contrary, by their crushing weight, their enormous cost, and their deadening effect upon living humanity, they will seriously impede our freedom in the larger life of a higher civilization. During the evolution of the nation, the moral culture of brotherhood was limited by geographical boundaries because at that time those boundaries were true. Now they have become imaginary lines of tradition, divested of the qualities of real obstacles. So the time has come when man's moral nature must deal with this great fact with all seriousness or perish. The first impulse of this change of circumstance has been the churning up of man's baser passions of greed and cruel hatred. If this persists indefinitely, and armaments go on exaggerating themselves to unimaginable absurdities, and machines and storehouses envelop this fair earth with their dirt and smoke and ugliness, then it will end in a conflagration of suicide. Therefore, man will have to exert all his power of love and clarity of vision to make another great moral adjustment which will comprehend the whole world of men and not merely the fractional groups of nationality. The call has come to every individual in the present age to prepare himself and his surroundings for this dawn of a new era, when man shall discover his soul in the spiritual unity of all human beings.